Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me the one and only Michael Hyson. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Doing great. And today we're going to be doing Necromancy Part 2. So let's go ahead and just jump into it.
All right.
So now let's speak about tapping into the death current, because I understand that before you work with necromancy, there's some exercises where you go ahead and exhale your thoughts and you visualize and you get into some rhythmic breathing. You exhale your thoughts and your dreams for the dead to absorb, and then as you inhale the death essence. And then once you go ahead and do that for a while, then you're in the death current. You tapped into it, and you can go ahead and work with the dead. Is that correct? You go ahead and explain.
It's not entirely correct. It is a part of it. For an example, very few people talk about void meditations. Very few people talk about sensory deprivation and really delving into things like yogic meditations, the praying mantis, for an example, or the lotus position. Okay. The lotus or half lotus is a great posture to get into because it allows you to keep your spine straight. It helps with your breathing. There's a book by Franz Bardon, I think his name is, called Initiation to Hermeneutics. There's a lot of dogma in it, but if you can get past that, you'll learn a lot. It was recommended to me by my teacher. And when you get into meditations, you want to clear your mind of everything. You want to work on your breathing, but more so, you want to look at yourself as a third party. Okay, think of it as a third party participant. You want your mind to be blank, but if a thought does cross your mind, you want to observe it. Okay, kind of look at it in how should I say this? A bystander, kind of like a scientific perspective, and see where it leads. It's kind of like going back and forth in time. So once you start going beyond this, controlling your breathing, controlling your thoughts, you're able to move into higher planes of existence, the alpha frame of mind, if you will. Here, you can go into what is known as the void meditation. The void meditation allows you to go into things like astral projection, soul travel, and other methods to commune with the spirits. So it does play a small role in it, but it is a major part of it when working with spirits.
Okay. Now, in Alderson's book, Mastering Witchcraft, he does speak in the book, contact a dead person's shadow. Basically, he's making their dish that they used to like in life, placing that dish on the altar, doing a series of things, and then the deceased spirit, their shadow, their shadow will come up and start walking, sit down at the altar table with you.
They're known as shades.
And then shades. Go ahead and then sit down and eat the meal.
Yep.
Now he instructs not to look directly at the
apparition,
at the shade, or else you may go mad.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead and explain that?
Well, first of all, shades are part of it's a form of necromancy. It's known as shadowmancy. Shadowmancy is where you work within the shadows, but there's a lot of applications that you can go into when working in this. It's not just calling forth spirits, in this case, shadows of former selves, okay, or former reincarnated or incarnate spirits, okay.
Right.
In this aspect, we're looking at summonings, conjurations, okay. When you work in the shadows, you're using and utilizing aspects of a deceased or the spirit that you're looking to contact. I mentioned this in the last video as well. You want something that belongs to them, something personal, like say a hair, fingernail clippings, a photo of that individual, even the name. And depending on how they die and how they lived, like say if you wanted to contact, say, I don't know, let's go with Aleister Crowley. Everybody today seems to be hung up on him. Then you'd want to tap into the shadow aspects. And this is calling forth the shades, which are former witches, former practitioners, former people who did not make the cut, so to speak. But at the same time, you are contacting them to come forth to commune with you so that you can learn from their mistakes.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between rejuvenation and reanimation?
Reanimation is the zombie effect. In Haitian Voodoo, when you're reanimating a corpse, you're basically bringing them back as a servant. They have no mind of their own, no will of their own. You're basically rejuvenating their corpse. Now, in reality, when you are talking reanimation, you're basically reviving a spirit. You're bringing back that spirit into their body. Think of the more modern day terminology that would be used is CPR. Okay, you have somebody that's drowned, they've died. You can bring them back through EMP, the defibrillator. You can bring them back through CPR, breathing into their mouth with the compressions on the chest. There's a lot of different ways to do this. In the old days, they used magic. They used seals, hieroglyphs, phylacteries, and a lot of other things that went into it. I believe the Green Emerald actually speaks of this, as well as the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Shem priesthood. Prime example.
Okay. Now, we spoke a bit last week about the Bokor using zombie powder to resurrect the dead and use them as slaves. But how long does he keep them around as slaves?
That's up to the individual. I mean, you consider the Boko or Bokor, the practitioner who practices zombification, can use them for the rest of their lives, or until that individual decides, hey, I'm no longer needed, and now it's, what do I do now? How do I get back into the land of the living?
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's you're that person's servant, that practitioner's servant until they're done with you. Outside of that, it's just basically if they toss you aside, well, now you got to figure out how to live again.
Mm-hmm.
And you start opening up, you end up cleansing yourself, you end up gaining that, how should I say this, that higher cognitive abilities to where you're more alert, more independent. And it does take a while to do that. The most common is when a Bokor will give you back your life.
Okay. Now, we both know that necromancy is because you're constantly working with, around death and all that. That energy will age you fast, and people can old fast who are necromancers. Is there any other reason why that is? Why they age fast?
Well, if we go back to the 15th century, I'd have an example. Up until that point, necromancers lived in constant pain. And a lot of this is due to the death current, as you put it. It's known as Da'ath, D-A''ATH. And this was associated with the death current itself because of the necrosis process. The necrosis process is the breaking down of your body, meaning your teeth are going bad, your health is declining, your joints are losing their structural integrity to the point where you're constantly in pain. You end up with arthritis. You end up with twisted and augmented organs. You end up with a lot of things that go along with this. So vampiric practices ended up getting introduced into necromancy around the 14th, 15th century. And it was scientifically proven that hemomancy was a way to stave off that necrosis, that Da'ath energy. And therefore, blood sorcery and vampiric practices became associated and closely linked to necromantic practices. And likewise, also with things like the ghoul, the vampire, the zombie, and a lot of other undeath death agents. So
yeah, a lot of people realize that as far as all these different mythical creatures and stuff, there is some truth. It starts somewhere. A lot of people just don't realize it's not just stuff that someone just made up one day. It has real life applications.
Yep.
Now, a lot of necromancy books will speak of the altar. Your altar has to face the west because the spirits of the dead enter from the west gate. Now, why is it? Is that because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west?
Well, a lot of that is untrue. You don't have to face the west or the east or the south. The altar is basically an altar of death. It is erected specifically to work with the spirits, with the dead.
Mhm.
You have items associated with the dead on there. You associate in cemeteries and a lot of other things, areas of death that are associated with your just your altar alone. Okay, be it a temporary altar or your permanent altar. Either way, the altar does not have to necessarily be in any given direction. You can put it in the east to work with, say, Lucifer, work with the goetic demons such as Murmur, Bifron, Seer, just to name a couple. Spirit, these demonic entities that work with spirits and forms of necromancy. You could even put it to the west and work with the healing factors of necromantic practices. So, I mean, if you want to work with, say, the jinn, go with the south, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just the east.
We concluded on this book last week, Which Book of the Dead, Christian Day. And in page 30, there we go. You got your copy.
Yeah. After we talked last time, I pulled it off the shelf, and it's like, you know what? It's been a long time since I've read this book. I could really use a refresher.
Me too. I pulled it out, and I was reading through it last night. I thought, you know what? I forgot about that. I forgot about that. It's been years since I read through.
Oh yeah.
But on page 30, he says, and I quote, "Our dead often stick around to help us. Bonds made in life often live on in death." Now, how true is that?
That's actually true. You consider, just like any other pantheon, you have your patrons and your patronesses. You have the spirits that want to work with you. You have spirits that are given to you. For an example, in Santeria or Pedo, you got the Orisha that are given to you when you are initiated into the system. If you're working with demonolatry, you have your patron or patroness that chooses to work with you. Likewise, spirits of the dead will work with you, and they want to work with you the more you open yourself up to their realms. So it's really fascinating to see how well they want to help you. They want to guide you. They want to teach you in what they know, but they're also willing to share what they know with you along your journey and your path through guidance and insight. And it is very, very much true.
Okay.
They will stick around.
Now, some people will recommend that if you, like, say, if you're working with the dead, instead of contacting, different, different entities, different demons to help with certain things, what they will do instead is call on different relatives that they have who have passed on. Like, let's say, if you want to get a good job, well, then contact, your grandfather who was good in the industry. Or if you want to find find someone to spend your life with, a partner. You can contact your uncle, who is a ladies' man. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
you agree with that? Contacting different dead relatives to help with things.
It's not just your relatives that you can contact. You can you can open up your ritual altar. Sorcerer, the blood sorceress Cagliostro, the necromancer, for example, in Blood Sorcery Volume 1, shows how you can open up the door and go in through the astral and commune with the dead in the realm of the dead. In this aspect, you can actually associate with them face to face. And you can also conjure them if you don't feel comfortable enough to do that. So in this aspect, when we are looking at, say, finding employment or becoming, as you said, the ladies' man or whatever, it's not just your relatives that you can contact for advice. You can open your altar up to those spirits and say, hey, this is what I need advice on. Is there a spirit or a group of spirits that are willing to help me through this and to guide me along the path so that I'm able to achieve my goals? Okay. In this case, I actually contacted some spirits last year because I knew I was getting tired with Duncan, and it was really time to move on, but I just couldn't afford to. So I ended up reaching out to the spirits, and I said, hey, if it's for me, then I want it. If it's not for me, then I don't want it. But I'm looking to move up in the company. I'm looking for that new challenge. I'm looking to further the career, not only as a necromancer, but as an employee of the industry. And at the time, I didn't realize that, guess what? My place was not at Dunkin' no more. I ended up working. I was standing in line. I was making drinks one day, and my current boss came through the window, ordering, like she always does, a whole bunch of coffees for her employees. And I jumped in. I had this overwhelming urge just to ask her about thanatology. And I ended up asking her, I said, hey, what kind of schools do you recommend for thanatology? And she told me. She said, first of all, she didn't know what it was. So I explained it to her and gave her some references and details of what a thanatology is associated with. And she said, well, a lot of that we train in-house for. If you come work for us, guess what? We can train you in-house in a few of those. And it's like right there, that wasn't just confirmation of what I had petitioned, but it was a sign. It was definitely time to move on. So right after my shift, I went in, I filled out the application, had the interview, and was hired on the spot. I now work in a nursing home.
Very nice.
Yeah. And it's ironic because it actually fits the image of a necromancer. And it fits our lifestyle and everything because we work as grave diggers, nursing home directors, or counselors, people, priesthood, morticians and such. So it really fit, and it was like
that, sometime soon. So
yeah,
that's a big step up for you. It's an advantage, I should say.
And the funny thing is, I'm working the same amount of hours at the same rate of pay, and I'm making $300 more.
Right on. It's
See, that's a benefit of working with these spirits and listening to them, because when I say that they're going to guide you and teach you, they're literally like a muse, if you wish, because they will do this stuff, and they will also help opening up the doors.
It's funny how sometimes the opportunities us occultists get from working with the spirit world, whereas the average person out there, is oblivious to it. I like to think of it as, so putting in, like, if you're playing a video game, we have special codes you can put into the system. That the path for us.
It's a special language.
Yeah, everybody else is playing the regular game of life. We have the special codes, which if you seek, your personal self, if you seek, to find out more of yourself and look inside and progress and become more human on your magical path, these opportunities will present themselves.
Exactly.
Whereas the average person, once, they're completely oblivious to it.
It is. It's downright amusing to see how they just get so frustrated, and it's like, hey, why don't you just go to the cemetery and petition the spirits.
Yeah.
You know?
No. Or, yeah. So,
It's because people are too afraid of death.
well, the fact is, even if people are religious, there is still magic that can be worked through religions, but they don't understand how magic works, how the energy works, so even if they were in their religion, if they understood those principles, they could still pray to their God.
Yep.
And they go around just, saying random stuff, which is just talking to the air.
Well, since we're on religion, let's talk about JCI here, the Judo-Christian institutions. Jesus was a necromancer. He brought 2 people back from the dead. He constantly gave omissions, acts of omission, prayer, worship. He performed black magic within forms of necromantic rites and rituals, bringing people back from the dead. He was a medium, the whole kit and caboodle. And it wasn't just him. He also brought the apparitions forth that came behind him through a rift in reality in front of 2 of his disciples as living proof. Hey, this is what I'm saying is truth.
Yeah.
People forget this, but when they fear death. So when they get around a lot of these topics, like say reading this out of the Bible, the Gospels, they overlook it. Even ministers don't even preach this stuff anymore, and they don't go into the actual, practices and why he did this, and why he became such an outcast and was hated so much.
Well, the problem is a lot of people just don't have, who have been in a religion for a long time, just don't have an open mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Their mind is so close. Well, the church teaches this, so there's no way that any other explanation can be true. So then they stay in that box, and they, and they're so stubborn. You can show them the truth; it's right in front of them, but they'll just deny it.
Exactly.
Some people, their mind's been set in cement, and they won't budge, no matter how many, arguments you corner them.
Yep.
And it's just facts. How people are.
I concur. And then you have the Shem priesthood out of ancient Giza, who performed magic with the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Green Emerald, and they did things associated not only with acts of worship towards Anubis, but also performed acts of autopsies, mummification, cleansing processes, religious worship. They had temples, and they were ran out of town on some occasions. Prime examples worldwide of this. And it's like, how can it not be true? And a lot of times it comes from the perception of whatever the dominant religion is, because they're the ones that tell the stories.
Have a political power.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people suggest that a libation to the dead is a good libation to the dead is milk and honey. Now, why do the dead respond to milk and honey so well?
Well, honey, for one, is a dual process. One, it's a sweetener. It would be like putting carcass out for Jehovah, so to speak, in the book of the book of Leviticus, rather. It's an attraction type thing. They feed on it. It's much like blood sorcery. They will feed off the blood that you give them to sustain them. But at the same time, honey is also something that will nourish your body as a necromancer, just like unleavened bread. Okay? Milk is the vitamins that you will need to sustain yourself. So blood, milk, honey, these are 3 items that a necromancer uses, and it's a lot more than that too. I have an entire list that I can spew off. But these are things that you can actually give to them as an oblation. It's an act of omission, it's an offering, a sacrifice. The Day of the Dead, you give fruits, same exact thing. It is an offering. and they love it. I don't know why, they just do.
Yeah. Either, I mean, the way I see it is that whether it's milk and honey or fruit, either way, there's energy attached to it. They can charge themselves up with it.
Exactly. Especially when they stick around because the veil is so thin.
Yeah.
During certain times of the year.
And it's also true that the rites of exorcism are far older than the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's what a lot of people don't realize. Those same methods that the priests use in exorcism existed before the church existed, before the Christian church existed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't realize.
You consider there are demons are known, for an example, just out of an example, the demonic entities are known, even baneful spirits in themselves have been known through many cultures spanning back to prehistoric, or I should say Paleolithic eras that need to be dealt with because they're harmful to humans. But doing acts of exorcism isn't just to send them home. It is also a way to say, hey, we're done communing. You can just get the hell out, so to speak. It's like doing a closing rite in a ceremonial ritual. That's all it is. But Christians have just simply learned to use it as a dominating force over any spirit that is not the one that they serve. And the Vedics used it. The Muckas did it. Native Americans do it. Aztecs, Mayans, you name it. They've all had their sources that dealt with this.
I found it interesting how much of the occult is in modern day religion. Like, let's say if you go to a Catholic service, you have the priest on the altar, vibrating and intoning out loud certain things, walking around the altar, having incense.
Yep.
And doing things so many times. That's
phallus.
It's all a magic ritual. Is what people don't realize. That's what and he's a priest. This is, people they're going to, you could call it a temple instead of a church. It's a magical ceremony, and they'll never see that.
It's nothing more than a ritual room.
Yeah.
Overpriced, but still.
You know what? That should be on a shirt. Religion is an overpriced, church is an overpriced ritual.
Yep.
I'd buy that shirt.
Same here. Oh. But yeah, it's basically, if you look at it, all it is if we go back into Remy, Nicholas Remy's perception of it, priests and monks were the ones that were the only ones considered to be the only ones to be able to do magic because they were able to not be corrupted. But then you have what is called the white witch or witchcraft that goes and asks permission. Hey, can I perform this rite? No? Okay, I guess there's nothing I can do. And then you have the black magi and sages, the black magician today, the warlocks. Basically, screw you, we're going to do it anyways.
Yep.
So I mean, it's just like the powders, the white powder that heals, the amber powder that makes sick, and the black powder that kills. It's the exact same thing. It's just different aspects of the ritual. And it's interesting to see just about how many ritualized components there are. If you go into necromancy, you see the circle with the triangle of evocation in a cemetery with the monk and his apprentice standing in the center of the circle of empowerment. You go into grimoire systems and you see the circle of evocation. You go into a church and it's like you said, the Catholics, for an example, they'll have the entire altar boys right behind them with the big ass cross on a stick, resembling the Son of God, so to speak, and you got somebody walking in front of him with a phallus, with the incense going. It's all one big ritual. Mm-hmm. Like I said, they've just learned to use it as a dominating force.
Mhm. Now, moving on. Now, it's been said to get a spirit to speak to you through dreams. It's you can sleep on or next to their grave.
Mm-hmm.
How true is that?
This is actually very true, except for we call it oneomancy. Oneomancy is dream sorcery or dream magic. And necromancers are known to sleep in coliseums. They're known to sleep in coffins. They're known to sleep next to corpses, and just literally sleep on the grave at a cemetery, just to get close to the death essence, to be able to commune with those spirits. It's like dressing up in their clothes. It's the exact same thing. This is just another application of communicating with them, and it allows you to become close with them. It's very much 100% true.
Okay. Now, I understand that you have brought some personal items from your practice to go ahead and show us today. Can you go ahead and start showing what you got?
All right. Now, as a necromancer, silver is one of the big things that we use. Anything of pure silver, like say silver keys. In this case, this is a defensive item that I used for charging, and that allows you can actually use that for protection as well within a magical sense. Cornelius stone, you have the quartz crystal, black jade. You can go with black jade or green jade. It's known as the necromancer's jade. And then you have the altar coin. In the old days, necromancers actually used coins and either brass or silver coins with bones, charred bones. There's a lot, I'm not going to get into that because there's a lot of dark aspects that go along with that within black magic, and it will go on a lot longer than what we intended here.
Right.
Then you have phylacteries. A lot of people, they overlook the planar aspects of them. And if you look on this one here, I have Saturn because I work a lot with the dark planet and the current that surrounds it. And on the other side, the alchemical symbol for transmutation, basically. And finally, we also have tools that we use, such as scepters. A friend and brother of mine made this for me. He lives over in Shetland. And
very impressive.
Oh yeah, he made this out of I believe it was a lamb, if I remember correctly, the skull of a lamb, the vertebrae, and he has a metal, kind of a steel rod in between them, holding them in place. He did an awesome job on this. This item is used as a power totem. When you get into phylacteries, you're going to look at totems, necklace, amulets, talismans, rings, and other forms of items that will be used for the dead. In this case, these ones here are considered to be death totems. They're used for black magic and storing of energy, except for this one here, which is used as a sign of authority. When you work in a graveyard, you become a spokesperson for the spirits of that graveyard. That is a sign of authority, much like a scepter or the crown.
Very interesting. It's a discussion. I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Is there anything you'd like to go ahead and head out?
For those of you wanting to get into necromancy, I would recommend going into folklore. I would recommend getting into mythology, archaeology, and historical accounts. I would also recommend being serious about your studies because there is a reason why necromancers walk alone. There is a reason why we are so serious when it comes to these practices and these rites. These things are not for the faint of heart. and you can find yourself in a lot of trouble that if you rush in, you're not going to be able to get out of it without help. So, I mean, what I would recommend is really do your homework, really delve into all applications of death and the rites and the rituals from various different religions, because you will find that a lot of things that, how should I say this, most authors will not post in their books. They will not delve into them, such as the darker side of Santa Morte, or that of Pelo Mayambi, Santeria,
I would
even
thought
witchcraft.
it would be published anyway.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to because of society. You'd be hunted down. So, I mean, yeah, it'd be a witch trial all over again. But and the reason why necromancy works is because the reason people fear it is because it works. Spirits are not to be trifled with. They're not toys. They're not like chew toys. They're actual beings that have a mind of their own, and they will deal with you if you disrespect them.
Right. Okay, well, it's been very intriguing, very interesting. It's been a pleasure having you on again. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime.
And everybody watching, it's good to have you. And everybody who's watching, go ahead and like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery. I'll have Michael's links again below this video. And see you next time.